Fireside Tales. Hello. I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell weird tales within tales. And I drink coffee. I drink coffee from my skull mug because I'm a deadhead. Do you all at home know what a deadhead is? A deadhead is somebody who really likes the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead is a band, psychedelic rock band. They toured from the 60s to the 90s. Which is a long time for a band to tour. But plenty of time to gather up plenty of fans, deadheads. They got their story from the Tibetan book, or they got their name from a story from the Tibetan Book of the Dead called The Grateful Dead. And I think the story is about reincarnation. And reincarnation is one of the weird things we cover here at Fireside Tales. I actually make this show mainly to teach people about reincarnation and what it is and that it exists. It's a thing. Reincarnation is when a person dies and their spirit moves on to another body, a baby body, a fetus probably, and then to a baby body. And then they grow up and they get to have another life. We'll get into the particulars of the rules of that in a little bit. So every week here at Fireside Tales, I tell the story of the Grateful Dead as it was told to me by a deadhead, by a fire, as it should be told. Every week here at Fireside Tales, I also discuss my book and the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records, or the Akasha, is an ancient library. It's a meditative library. You can only get there through meditation. Or if you're a spirit, I think you can come and go. It seems to be on the spiritual plane. And in this library, every soul has a book. And in your soul's book is record of where and when and who you have been. So I've had access to the Akashic Records meditatively since I was like 16 or 17. And I did a meditation on the High Priestess card and the Tarot deck, and she gave me a key, and she said it was for the Akashic Records. And I didn't even know what the Akashic Records were. And then I looked it up, and in my tarot book by Mary Kay Greer, she mentions Tarot for Yourself. She mentions the Akashic Records, and I was kind of amazed that it was a real thing, and this information came from my meditation, and it's real. And so then I began meditating on the Akashic Records, and don't do that. And he's gonna knock over my whole ensemble. This is my bear. I don't know if you can see him. It's in the shot, but he's my best pal. Anywho, so every week here at Fireside Tales, I also discuss my book and the Akashic Records, and this season we've been covering just one life in my book and the Akashic Records, and that's that of Hatshepsut. So we're in ancient Egypt this season. Could you guys please stop messing with my dummy card? It's attached to my tripod, and then the whole thing could go totally wonky. Yes, I have a dummy card. It keeps me on track. So I don't forget anything. So I'm going to go ahead and tell the story of the Grateful Dead. Go ahead and do that now. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. It was so long ago that she traveled by foot. And one day, she happened upon a village. As she got closer to the village, she noticed there was a crowd in the village. As she got closer still, she noticed that the crowd was arguing. Excuse me. As she got closer still, she noticed that the crowd was arguing quite literally over a dead body. There was a dead body laying there, and these people were arguing disrespectfully, I might add, over the dead body. And they were arguing over who was going to pay his debts, and who was going to bury him, and who was going to pay for that. And the traveler thought the whole display was rather disrespectful and gross. And so she just stopped them, and she paid the dead man's debts, and she paid for a proper burial, and she prayed over the dead man's grave, and she traveled on. And then one day, decades later, she happened upon a life or death situation in which she, out of nowhere, was saved by a total stranger. And she stopped and said, "Thank you, and who are you, and where did you come from, and why did you save my life?" And the stranger simply said, "I am the Grateful Dead." So it's a story about reincarnation. The Grateful Dead, the stranger at the end that saves the traveler's life, is clearly reincarnated. It's decades later after she paid his debts. And he remembered that somehow. And he saved her life as a thank you for paying his debts and praying over his grave and giving him a proper burial. Some people think it's a corpse. Some people think it's a zombie. It's not a corpse. Corpses don't save lives. Zombies don't either. So it's not either. It's the dead man from the beginning of the story who remembers the lovely gesture of the traveler and paying his debts and paying for a proper burial and praying over his grave. And he wants to repay that. And he saves the traveler's life. And he does repay his debts to her. And it's kind of a spooky kind of story, but it's not a corpse. Anywho, so my book in the Akashic Records is really big and really old and really dusty. And like I said, it's record of who and where and when my soul has been. And I don't look in other people's books in the Akashic Records. And I go with my spirit guides. So if you have any designs on trying to go, meet your spirit guides first and go with them. It's sort of transcendental meditation, so you have to make sure you're going to come back, basically, to your body. You're going to kind of leave your body to get to the Akashic Records. So half of my big old dusty book is light and dry and sandy, and in it contain much longer lives than I have in the later part of the book, but longer lives than you'd think humans even live. They're like thousands of years long. So that's weird. And then there's a watermark, which I think marks the Great Flood. And everything after that is dark and wet and muddy. And my lives in my book are shorter in that part of the book. All of my lives have these different threads that connect each life to the next. Things that I did in each life. I'm sorry. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry. I'm purposely making this show at a time where I thought my daughter was going to be at school, but she showed up and almost barged through, but didn't, so all is well. Anywho, so I have threads that connect each life to the next. Fire being one of them. Fire safety is another. In the kettle up on the stove, I have water. I have water in my cup here. I also have water around the corner in the sprayer. If you build a fire outside, you'll want to make sure there's not any overhanging branches. And then you want to dig a pit, and you want to line that pit with stones, and then you want to line that with stones before you even start. Then you want to make sure you have a shovel. Obviously, if you dig a pit, you'll have a shovel. But you want to have some loose dirt and some water in a bucket or available with a sprayer hose. So, fire safety was very important to the ancients because, you could burn down your whole village easily because they depended on fire for heat and cooking and life, basically. So, fire was a big thing, but fire safety was also just as big a thing. So, another one of my threads is meditation. And before I meditated in any of my lives, I smudged and grounded first. So, smudging, this is sage. It's dried sage. Smudging cleanses your aura of negative energy. So, you light it kind of like an incense. Try not to light yourself on fire or your surroundings. And you just smudge your aura with it. Making sure not to catch anything on fire. And making sure to have a water source nearby before you light your smudge stick. Fire safety. Very important. So that's cleansing your aura. And then to cleanse your inside, you want to ground. So that's a breathing exercise. So you breathe in and breathe out all your negative. And then you breathe in and think an uber positive thought. And breathe out positive. You want to do this before meditating, but before rituals, before readings. I read tarot and runes. And if you ground and smudge before you do readings or meditating or rituals, you'll get the most positive spiritual results from any of those things if you smudge and ground first. So obviously meditating is one of my threads. Smudging and grounding is one of my threads. Also, stones, regular stones, limestone crystals, all kinds of stones are definitely a thread. I've always been a rock hound, and I think I will always be that. Astral projection through the meditation is also one of my threads. And being a psychic medium is also one of my threads. And whether I knew it or not, or understood it or not, I was a psychic medium in every one of my lives, including this one. And I spend a decent amount of time in the spirit realm. And I speak to spirits quite frequently, and they all have the same thoughts on reincarnation. And that is that everyone who's been reincarnated has also been murdered. That if you're murdered, you get to come back and try again. That's, unfair in the rules of life and death. So, interdimensional travel is also one of my threads, and also one of the things that Hatshepsut learned, as well as previous excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted because my kids are yelling in here. Kids. Anywho, so interdimensional travel and astral projection are things that Hatshepsut learned from her mom, and we've discussed this. And I guess she had spirit guides, but they practiced a thing in ancient Egypt, at least the pharaohs and pharaohs' families did, in that when they were going to astral project or interdimensionally travel, they tethered their souls to the pyramids. I still use the pyramids as a jumping off point or arriving point. So today we're going to discuss Hatshepsut's teen years. Last week I discussed her childhood, and I had forgotten that she was actually married to her stepbrother as a child. I figured I'd have to cover that in teen years or adult years, but no, actually, she was 12 when her brother husband died. So, dodge that bullet. I don't think she was ever too thrilled with being married to her brother. And they certainly didn't consummate the relationship. I think he was even younger than her, and she was only 12 when he died. So the whole thing was kind of silly and pointless and weird. And I think she thought so at the time. She was one of the first pharaohs to be buried in the Valley of the Kings. And I spoke to you about the lions in past weeks as we've been discussing Hatshepsut. And they had lions when she was a child everywhere, like pets. Like they would scratch their ears and their bellies and name them, and they kept lions, lots of them. But when Hatshepsut was a child, someone in the night poisoned and killed all of the lions, and then stole a bunch of stuff. So they moved a bunch of stuff. After that, tombs and such, um, tombs that were littered with treasures for your afterlife ventures, um, they were all moved to the Valley of the Kings after the lions died and they were ransacked. So, um, they moved all of the tombs out of Egypt's capital, where the palace was, to the Valley of the Kings after the lions were all killed. The pyramids were never tombs, however. The pyramids were power plants, essentially. The ancient Egyptians harnessed power with water and light, and with light bouncing off different metals. They used electrum a lot, which was a combination of silver and gold. And the pyramids had white stone on the outer surface of the pyramids originally, and in Hatshepsut's life. And they had gold or electrum. I think it was actually gold on the points of the pyramid, up at the top. And the gold, the electrum, and water and sun in certain places, somehow they figured out how to harness power out of these things. And the pyramids were power plants. Only 15 other women ruled as pharaoh. And I think she was out of her teens when she became pharaoh. But I'm not certain. But that really wasn't part of the culture. Women weren't really pharaohs on the whole. She just happened to fall into that role. The pharaoh wore a ceremonial crown and ceremonial beard. And yes, even if they were men, they wore the ceremonial beard. And so did Hatshepsut. It was part of her culture, part of their culture. They had hieroglyphics and cartouches, and before she got married, she knew how to read and write, which was unusual for anyone of that day, but specifically for women. So by her teen years, she could read and write and correspond. And she did. There's some correspondence to other queens, and it's still carved into stone. Little tablets they had, and the leaders, I'm not sure if common people had a cartouche, but Hatshepsut had a cartouche, and the things that belong to Hatshepsut bear her cartouche, and that's how we know they were hers. And her cartouche in hieroglyphics said, "An immortal is a being who cannot be killed," which is kind of interesting. Dead people cannot be killed. They are already dead. I think I had longer lives in this light, dry, sandy part of my book, but I think this particular life was cut short. even though I think she thought she couldn't be killed. And that's what they said back then about the god, or about the pharaohs, is that they were gods and they couldn't be killed. They were immortals. But clearly, she was killed. But yet, here I am. So, I mean, on some levels, maybe she was right. do, do, do. They were a very mysterious culture. And I've spoke to you before about the magic that she learned from the priest kings, and she learned how to move stone very easily, and I believe music and magic and stones were very important to the ancient Egyptian culture. They carved art and news and propaganda into the stones, and they moved them and built beautiful architecture that still wonders the minds of humans today. They're one of the seven wonders of the world, the pyramids, aren't they? I think they are. And people still don't exactly know how they were built, but I know that there is a big difference between moving a stone when you're humming and moving a stone when you're not humming. You could try it. Just find a stone that's hard for you to move and, lift it with difficulty, and then try lifting it when humming. And you'll find that it's much easier when you hum. It's not just a whistle while you work thing. The stone actually seems lighter. And there's definitely something to that. And the staffs that they used, and I think they were more like tuning forks, the ankhs, and the ankh staffs. They have so many beautiful monuments and architecture besides the pyramids that are just amazing. That these people accomplished these awesome accomplishments with very little, though I think they had power. And they had the power of magic and music and song, which I really think that originally humans sang before they spoke. And I don't think the ancient Egyptians are any exception to that. I think they were still mostly singing, but they had figured out also that it gets stuff done. And speaking of singing, every week here at Fireside Tales, I have been singing David Crosby's Deja Vu, because it's the only song that I really know that is in any way about reincarnation. And I wrote a song called Reincarnation, and I sang it like once or twice, I think, on the show, and then David Crosby died. And so I felt, as homage to David, that I should sing his song. So that's what I do. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before on another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before. And you know, it makes me wonder what's going on under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La da da, la da da, la da da. La da 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 da. We have all been here before. 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 That was the best version of that song I've ever played. Interesting. I do play off an audience. And I seem to have a little one today. My granddaughter and her friend in her room. And I guess that's fine. Sorry for the interruptions and the commotion, but life, it's complicated and messy, just like death and reincarnation. I guess that's it for me today. Oh, I think I covered everything on my dummy card. Bear's laying down now. He's given up trying to tear my whole apparatus down. So, yeah, the ancient Egyptians were a very mysterious culture. But I think that they became more mysterious after the Great Flood, because I think they had a lot of books that explained things, and then when the Great Flood came, only what was carved into stone was left. So I think they were mysterious before the Great Flood, but the Great Flood made them very mysterious. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say for today. What was carved into stone about Hatshepsut? Some people have called propaganda. I call it preserving history. Her brother, when she was still alive, her stepbrother, not the one she married, but a different one. Some people call him her stepson, but I think he was a stepbrother. Nonetheless, some people say that what she carved into stone was propaganda, but her stepbrother went around while she was still alive, chipping any reference to her sex off of her stone story. Her story carved into stone. She was carving it into stone because she wanted future people like us, to know that she was a she and she was a pharaoh. Her brother, however, or son or whatever, step guy, who was pharaoh after her, he was too young to become pharaoh when she became pharaoh. So he waited and she reigned for 22 prosperous, peaceful years. And then he got to be pharaoh when she died. But I think he killed her so that he could be pharaoh. And before he killed her, he had started chipping her sex, her pronouns off of her monuments, which is strange. History does repeat itself, doesn't it? So, yeah, that's it for me for today. Have a weird and wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching.